Okay, welcome back to the 90s Rewind, everybody. And I'm going to take you back now to my early 90s. It's my bedroom wall. I've got pictures of Kylie Minogue everywhere. I'm settling down after school, and there I am looking at a broom cupboard. And in that broom cupboard is a certain gentleman, and he's joining me now. Simon Parkin, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It sounds like you had a bizarre hobby of looking into cupboards under stairs and that kind of thing. Do we need to explain what the broom cupboard was?
Well, I suppose so. I mean, it is possibly the most famous cupboard in television history. I don't think there are other cupboards to rank it, but do you want to explain the concept of the broom cupboard at least?
Basically, at the BBC, when I was growing up, there were these very deep voices that had a lovely introduction to a TV program over a picture of like a world that spun. And the BBC continuity announcers were in a very small little booth. It was a kind of a little bit like a radio studio, but they had access to all sorts of buttons that said technical fault, and you could cut up the clock that came before the news and stuff. And a very clever man at the BBC called Pat Hubbard realised that over on ITV, in amongst the children's programmes, they'd worked out that a stuffy voice of someone sounding a bit posh wasn't the way of attracting younger viewers. So they decided to bring in actual presenters to present the bits around the programs that were the children's programs. So ITV started with the very first children's ITV presenter was Matthew Kelly of Stars in Their Eyes, pretending to be shooting round space in a fake spaceship. And the BBC went, right, we can do our own one of these, but we've got no money, no budget, no nothing. So they basically bought a camera that they then screwed to the side of the monitors in the continuity suite where the posh BBC voice person was. And then they turned it on and put Philip Schofield in front of it. And then it became this massive, great big thing. And it was all done from the broom cupboard because it was a very tiny little locked off shot where you saw Philip straight on, and behind him you had like a bit of that wall and a bit of that wall, and they'd put pictures up, and that was it. And that was basically the size of the room. And so the broom cupboard, the children's BBC broom cupboard, became the stuff of legend.
And of legends, I mean, if you go through the list of the people that sort of came through the broom cupboard over time, I mean, you've mentioned Philip Schofield, everybody that's been through that is still working in broadcasting and doing fantastic stuff and made a very big name for themselves. There's names like Andy Peters, Philippa Forrester, yourself, Toby Anstis, all of those people sort of coming through. Zoe Ball, I think, did a stint in the broom cupboard as well. What do you think it is that's made it such an important kind of reach out for reaching audiences? Because like you said, you're talking to me from your radio studio. You're still continuing to work in radio and broadcasting now. Why is it that it's been such a successful thing for presenters?
I love that there was the hint of against all odds, you're still working, Simon. How does that happen? I think what it boils down to is we were given a freedom. And I'm pretty sure if you said it to Philip, he'd say the same, and Andy Crane would say the same. And I know from when Andy Peters and Philippa Forrester joined, we were given a freedom to sort of find our way, to sort of learn. We were all fresh and new and hadn't done much television. Philip had done a whole load in New Zealand, but we were all sort of learning how it all worked. And because we were quite honest about the way we were doing it, and it was... TV is very different than radio. Radio, you can conjure up an image of something. You can plant a seed in somebody's mind that allows their imagination to do stuff. With TV, they get what they get. If they look at a TV, it's all there for you. And you could see that there was nothing going on. We're in a funny little room. There's a poster on the wall. And that's what we sort of traded on. And the viewers at home kind of like the simplicity. It wasn't trying to be high-tech and whizzy and lots of graphics and stuff like the Saturday morning shows were, or Top of the Pops was. It was just, you're just chatting to someone who's sitting in the corner of your living room. And I think it just worked because, I mean, gosh, what an amazing list of presenters you mentioned there. Philippa Forrester, Philip Schofield, Andy Peters, very engaging, very amazingly good presenters who connected with an audience because they were youthful, because they sort of understood what was going on at the time. And the viewers then sent us lots of letters. And so you might get your name on the telly. And that was really big in the 80s. To 15 million people watching the telly, your name might be read out. You'd be a massive star at school tomorrow. So all of this sort of just came together in the perfect time, if you like. And it just, I don't know. I guess if you overanalyze anything, you find more problems with it than good stuff. But it just sort of worked, and I know from the people who still come up to me and say, "Oh, I used to love children's BBC." It was very special at that point. If you were growing up, there was nothing else to do. You got in from school at 10 to 4 and kick back, shoes off, put the telly on. And if it was me that was there, then that's great.
Well, it was you that was there, but my last question on the whole kind of broom cupboard area is the fact that you weren't alone in that particular broom cupboard. There was always somebody around. Now, Gordon had kind of moved along with Philip. Is that correct? Were you the Ed generation?
Well, let me tell you. When I first came to Children's BBC, here's a whole load of things you've forgotten. Bobby the Banana was the first star that I was a co-presenter with. Andy Crane had brought Bobby the Banana on. Bobby was a stuffed cuddly toy banana. He was in no way animated, so he just sort of sat plonked on the desk. Then when I took over the broom cupboard for sort of a big long summer stint, we had a live goldfish called Gums, and then BBC Health and Safety. So hang on a minute, you can't have a live goldfish because you've got a water bowl on top of all of that electrical equipment. So then we had to have a stunt goldfish that was called Gums. And then Ed the Duck came in, and Ed became, a massive, hugely successful star. Now, Ed was helped in his career by a lady called Christina, who was the producer of Children's BBC. So she was doing the job of being Ed's right-hand person, as well as making sure that the show stayed on air and was all technically good. Wilson the butler, Mark Wilson, producer, who again was, giving the animation of his hands to the nation as a special treat, and yet he was doing like a proper job in the office as well. So we were a very close-knit team, which again is probably why it kind of worked so well, because there would just be 2 or 3 of us sitting around going, could we do this? Shall we do that? Yeah, let's just do it. And then if it doesn't work, we just won't do it tomorrow.
I looked up some of the puppeteers of Gordon and Ed, and they've gone on to be fairly high-powered BBC executives now as well. So it's
quite right too. Talent will always shine through.
Now, this brings me very nicely on in terms of talent. Your first musical choice was Kylie. We found I feel I've found a kindred spirit. Anyone who listens to this show knows that there's at least one Kylie song shoehorned in there every week. Why Better the Devil You Know?
I just love that song. I was very lucky that when I was doing Children's BBC, it was at the peak of the pop Stock Aitken and Waterman explosion. And so, I was lucky enough to be in Kylie's company more than once. And I was also very, very in with the company that did all of the promotions. And they sent me a cassette of Kylie's new single, which was Better the Devil You Know. And I had it like 2 months before it came out. And it just so happened that I moved house. I bought my own first flat. I say bought, I got a mortgage. I didn't buy it, but you know what I mean? And so the decoration of the flat took place with a ghetto blaster in the corner of the room, and basically Kylie's Better the Devil You Know was just played constantly. So I can only apologize to my neighbors who, they didn't know how great this song was going to be. They didn't know it was going to be a future number 1. They just knew that it was playing all day, every day, while some man was upstairs painting. So it just takes me back to that sort of that lovely time where I felt young and irresponsible, and suddenly I had the responsibility of a mortgage.
Yeah, well, Kylie making everybody grow up through the years. Brimful of Asher is your next choice, and we're going to play that for you now. Corner Shop. Now, this is sort of one of those one-hit wonders, but at the same time, absolutely, bang on for the 90s, isn't it?
Oh, brilliant song. Of course, it came out, and then it got the Fatboy Slim remix, and then was this massive, hugely brilliant song. I'm moving to the next stage of my growing up. By the time Brimful of Asher had come out, I was a dad, and my daughter, I'm someone who I just will not dance. I cannot dance and will not dance. I've had professional choreographers saying everyone can dance, and then I've done something and they've gone, oh, you're right, you can't dance. And so I will never dance at weddings. I will never dance in public. If Strictly were to call up, I suspect the money might make me have a rethink. But it's probably doubtful it's going to happen. But the only dancing I would do was when my daughter, little Emily, I would pick her up and we would jiggle around to Brimful of Asher by Corner Shop, and she would giggle as a 1.5-year-old would, and I would smile and laugh, thinking, this isn't really dancing. I'm merely moving barely in rhythm, but that's the only dancing I've ever allowed myself to do ever. And so whenever I hear Brimful of Asher, I think of a small giggling daughter before she got teenage and stressful and all that kind of stuff, and just how happy it was back then when songs sounded like this.
Excellent. Well, we're going to play it for you now. I've been busy writing a very quick email to Claudia Winkleman to let her know that you want to go on Strictly. And
Thanks.
We'll be back with Simon in just a minute. Here's Brimful of Asher, Corner Shop.